Welcome to the Behind the Girl Boss podcast, where every woman's journey takes center stage. Join us in this safe space as we explore the ins and outs of business, career, mental health, the music industry, and more. Whether you're a go-getter or a dream chaser, we've got stories for you. Follow us on Instagram and TikTok for an exclusive backstage pass. Get ready to be inspired, empowered, and entertained. Welcome to the ride. Hey everyone, what's up and welcome back to the podcast. So we have another guest with us and we have Rachel. So hi Rachel.
Hi, how are you?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm good. Thank you so much for having me.
Of course, I'm so excited. Do you want to start off by telling us a little bit about yourself, who you are, what you do?
Yeah, so my name is Rachel. I am 28 years old. I live in Washington State. I am actually a speech language pathologist by day, but my other side gig is that I'm a content creator. I started off sharing my gluten-free and dairy-free lifestyle, but I recently kind of made a pivot and started sharing more about my queer identity.
Yes, I'm so excited to dive into all that with you. But before we do that, I like to do a little hot seat segment to kind of just break the ice and know little fun facts. So the first one is if you could have dinner with anyone dead or alive, who would it be?
Okay, this one is so hard. My first instinct is to say Michelle Obama. I would love to sit down with her, pick her brain, and just hear about her life experiences. I think she's a really strong woman, and I think we all have a lot to learn from her. So it would be a phenomenal dinner conversation to sit down with her.
Yes. Yes, I love that. I agree. The next one is what's one TV show, book, or podcast that you recommend everyone like watch or listen to?
I mean, New Girl is my
Yes.
go-to TV show. I mean, if you're in a bad mood, watch New Girl and it immediately makes you laugh and feel a lot better. As far as podcasts go, I love Armchair Anonymous with Dax Shepard. Specifically, I love hearing all like the crazy wild stories. The Armchair Expert is dives more into interviews, but Armchair Anonymous is actual people telling stories and they are so funny. They make me laugh while I'm driving.
I love that. I have to listen to those. I haven't heard those yet. But yeah, and then the last one is what's one thing you can't start your day without?
It sounds cliche, but coffee is a big one. Another
Yes.
one, just any kind of physical movement. I like to do my workouts first thing in the morning just to get them done with. I feel like I'm way more productive during my day when I start my day with some kind of movement.
Yeah. No, I feel that. Coffee, like if I don't have a coffee, I just know it's like not going to be a good day, which is kind of sad, but whatever.
100%. I agree.
So as someone who does share a lot of their life online and shares like their identity and what they eat and everything like that, I like to ask people what's something that you do for fun that many people may not know that you actually do.
I mean, I love to travel. I really do. I think ever since I was little, I've loved going to see new places. So that is something that I'm always looking forward to. I always am looking to plan trips. Where can I go? What place
Mhm.
to see? So that is something that I love to do for fun. That's totally outside of work and just experience new places, new cultures, different people.
What's like the number one place on your bucket list right now?
So my wife and I are currently trying to plan our honeymoon. We got married in July and we
Okay.
didn't do like immediate honeymoon. We did a mini moon. And so we've been trying to plan where we want to go. And so I recently put on my Instagram stories like, hey, queer community, where are some places that you've wanted to go? And I got this huge list of places that people have loved to go to. Lately, I've been looking at Portugal. It
Okay.
so beautiful, but I would love to see Sweden. I would love to go to Italy. I mean, there's so many places on my bucket list.
Yes, I love that. I'm excited for to see where you go. But yeah, Portugal, I've never been, but I've seen some people going there and it just looks beautiful and like such a fun time and the food looks good too.
Oh my gosh, I know.
Growing up, did you always envision yourself working in your full-time job that you're doing now along with like being a content creator, or did you have like a different path in mind?
No, I definitely didn't. Growing up, I had a lot of different aspirations. I remember I wanted to be a marine biologist for a long time,
Mhm.
which is so funny because I grew up in Michigan. So we were not I wasn't near any kind of water
Yeah.
that I could be a marine biologist. And I remember my brother being like, no, that's probably not going to be your path, which if you're a marine biologist, go at it. That sounds amazing. But then I went to college and I didn't really know what I wanted to do. Another life dream of mine was to be an interior designer. My aunt is an interior designer. And so I thought that would be my path. And I went to a couple classes and it wasn't for me. There's a lot more than just the beautiful aesthetics of making a room pretty. So that was kind of a shell shocking thing where I was like, okay, not for me. So I became an SLP when I shadowed my neighbor who's an SLP, and I fell in love with the ability to help people. My mom is a nurse, my wife is a nurse, and I knew that forever I've always been a very empathetic person. I wanted to help people. So being a speech path was my way of how can I help people make a difference in their life, but not necessarily be a nurse where I have to be with the blood and the gore and all the things that
Yeah.
medical field. So that is what I started to do. I went to grad school for it, got my master's, and around that time, like 2019 is when I started sharing more online for my gluten-free and dairy-free lifestyle because I have food intolerances to both of those. So that was something I was just kind of doing on the side for fun. I never thought that I would be doing it more as like a side hustle. I would love to make it my full-time career. It's just we're not quite there yet, but hopefully one day we can be.
Yeah. So I was going to ask, so you have intolerances to both of those. When did you kind of figure that out? Because I know like, well, I'm like lactose intolerant. So like that, I did the test, but I know like for gluten intolerant or like celiac, sometimes it's a little bit more difficult to figure that out. So what was that journey like for you?
Yeah. So in high school, I started getting these really, really bad migraines where I specifically remember when I would eat pizza. Within a half hour of eating pizza, I would have this killer migraine. And
Mm-hmm.
at the time, my mom was like, oh, it's probably the MSG that's
Yeah.
in the like, because I loved barbecue chicken pizza. So she's like, it's probably in the barbecue sauce because gluten intolerances weren't really a thing
Yeah.
in 2015 when I first started kind of noticing these symptoms. And so we thought it was that for a little bit. We thought, oh, we're getting a migraine because we're not eating enough. Maybe our blood sugar
Mm-hmm.
thing. And so it wasn't really until I started doing a little bit more research on my own because,
Yeah.
again, doctors weren't talking about gluten intolerances. So I remember kind of looking at my symptoms. I get the migraine. I get like really bad stomach pain where my like upper abdomen is
Okay.
pushes way out and it's super, super uncomfortable and it will linger for a couple days. I think my intolerance kind of got worse over time because growing up, I never had these issues. It wasn't
Mm-hmm.
until high school where I started to have that occurring more often. So when I did a little bit of a deep dive into a gluten intolerance, I remember texting my mom because she was sleeping and I was up researching this late at night.
As one is, yeah.
Yeah. And I was like, I think I have a gluten intolerance. And she's like, okay. So we went to the doctor and I kind of brought it up to them. And they're like, okay, yeah, maybe let's do a week without gluten. Let's do a week without dairy. And then let's do a week without both. And
Mm-hmm.
so I cut gluten, which is a huge learning curve. Anyone who goes gluten free initially will know that there's gluten and wheat in so many things. And especially in 2015, there wasn't a lot of products that you could easily replace. So at the beginning, it was literally just cutting out all the bread, all the pasta,
Yeah.
all things that I knew initially had gluten or wheat in them. And so I felt better after that, went dairy free, felt good after that, but I felt the best when I was gluten free and dairy free. And so I stayed with that for a little bit. And then I tried to introduce dairy back in because I was like, oh, maybe I'm just lactose free. And
Yeah.
I immediately felt sick again. And that's when I decided, okay, I'm just going to cut out both. And I've never actually been tested for celiac because my doctor told me you'd have to go back eating gluten and wheat for X amount of weeks. And then it's in your system and then we can test for gluten. And I was like, no, thank you.
Yeah.
I don't think I need to know specifically. I don't get sick off of cross contamination, so that kind of tells me I don't have celiac, but
Mhm.
everyone's body is so so different.
Yeah, for sure. And what like made you want to start sharing your gluten-free and dairy-free lifestyle on Instagram and start sharing recipes and things as such?
I have always loved cooking and baking. I remember as a little girl when like my friends would come over to play, when I would run through the things that we could do. One of them was always we could bake. We could bake.
Hmm.
I had a easy bake oven as a kid.
Me
Um,
too.
oh yeah, I mean like we cooked with a light bulb. We were so innovative.
Yes.
So once I became gluten-free and dairy-free, I started to figure out how can I adapt the recipes that I've always loved to make sure that I can still eat it. I'm the only one in my family with gluten and dairy intolerances. Going home to eat, especially when I was in college and I would go home, there was often not anything on the table that I could eat because, again, I'm the only one who has these food intolerances. So I started just playing around with recipes and trying to adapt recipes that I already knew how to make and making swaps that were gluten-free and dairy-free. I just started sharing it more. It started as more, I mean, as Instagram used to be, snapping a picture of what I was eating. And from there, it kind of grew to more recipe development or trying just new things, especially with the seasons as they go, because I love, if it's fall, incorporating more pumpkin. If it's winter, incorporating more peppermint. It became a creative outlet. And I started loving just sharing all different kinds of recipes on Instagram so that people who have gluten-free and dairy-free diets don't feel like they have to fit this tiny little mold. Like there's still so many good foods, so many good recipes
Yeah.
and have. It's just you have to get a little creative.
Yeah. And your wife, did she like follow this lifestyle before as well? Or like because of you, like she started following that?
Because of me.
Okay.
So I always joke that when we go out to eat and they put bread in the middle of the table, like she's going to be the one to eat all the bread because I can't eat it.
Yeah.
I'm going to be the one who orders like very heavily dairy and wheat gluten meals because that's the time when she can. People have often asked me, do you cook two separate meals for dinner? I'm like, no, she just eats what I eat because I'm the one who primarily cooks and bakes at our house. So I think she's gotten used to it. And I like to think that when we have kids that I'll still cook things gluten-free and dairy-free just because it's easier to make one big meal rather than
Yeah.
incorporate different elements into different meals for people.
Yeah. And now there's so many like alternatives and stuff too, because I remember with my stomach issues, I had to like eat like gluten free for like, I don't know, a month or something. And there was so many like options recently compared to like before. Like before, I feel like there was nothing. So now that there's so many new like alternatives and things, I feel like it's much easier.
Oh yeah, 100%. That's something that I'm so glad has like continues to be something that like different products are working on developing because yeah, you're right. In 2015 when I first became gluten-free, it was like there was nothing. And
Hmm.
did have a gluten-free product, it tasted like cardboard. It wasn't
Yeah,
good. It's definitely something where I'm happy that there's more products on the line that we can get a little bit more creative with.
for sure. So what was like one meal or anything like a pastry or something that like you really missed and you were able to recreate it in a gluten-free way?
Pizza is a big one. I really miss just like really good pizza. And I recently discovered that I can tolerate sourdough.
Okay.
So I made a sourdough pizza crust and it took like all day for me to make because it has to do the bulk rise. And we still use dairy free cheese, but the actual pizza crust tasted like I remember it tasting. And I was seriously like, oh my gosh, I cannot believe I can tolerate this because it tastes like regular pizza. Yeah, that was like a huge game changer to me when I learned that I could digest sourdough because now I feel there are so many recipes that the door's open to and now I can
Yeah.
try them and so many things that I haven't been able to make now that I hope I can make. So I'm
Yeah.
excited to try cinnamon rolls with my sourdough starter. That's another one that I do miss, especially around the holidays. So
Hmm.
I'm to try that out and hopefully it tastes just as good as I remember.
Yeah. And how do you kind of come up with the recipes that you share on your Instagram?
A lot of my recipes that I share, I would say are pretty simple to make. I'm not an extravagant cook by any means.
Hmm.
So a lot of it is just what is a meal or a sweet treat that I know I will enjoy, that I know my wife will enjoy. I will kind of use other influencers as kind of some creative aspects to see like, okay, what are they making? And then go from there and kind of put my own twist on things. Another way I love to do it is just taking recipes that I see and making all the swaps that make it more gluten free and dairy free. But
Yeah.
sometimes it's just a creative, I'll be on a walk and I'm like, ooh, I should really try making whatever it is. And then I go home and I just try to make it. And I've had some recipes completely flop. And then there's other times where the recipes turn out really great. And so that's always where I'm like, ooh, yay, I did it. Like I
Hmm.
have a background in cooking or baking. So a lot of it is trial and error.
Yeah.
But I think it goes to show that anyone can start cooking and baking at home and making food that they love.
Yeah, for sure. So, going on a completely different topic now, your queer identity. When did you come into your own queer identity and how has that impacted your life?
I came into my queer identity in 2020. 2019, I was dating a boy and we broke up. And after that breakup, I kind of was like, you know what? Maybe I'm bisexual. And it was something that I never really thought about too much previously. Like I always say that I never had like the, oh no, I'm not dating a girl. I would never date a girl. I just was kind of like, I never tried that. So once I broke up with him, I made a hinge and I had made it to both women and men. And then I think I switched it to just women because I think I was like, I want to try this. Um,
Hmm.
let's see how it goes. And I matched with my now wife, Sam. And so she's the first woman I've ever dated, ever been with. And I joke that she had to go through a lot of different relationships with women, and I had to go through one, and I'm still with her. And so it worked out really well in my favor. In 2020, we met in February, right before COVID all happened.
Yeah.
We met, we went on our separate spring breaks. I went with my friends down in Austin, Texas. She went to Mexico with her friends. We had met the day before we left for our separate trips. And I remember meeting her. And when she left, I was just like, oh my gosh, this is going to change my life. I just knew it. And it felt so like so cringe and so cliche, but like I shut the door and I remember like pressing my back up against the door and being like, what the hell just happened? Like that it was immediate sparks. And so I knew from that moment that she would change my life. I didn't know that she would end up being my wife, but I'm
Hmm.
happy that it came to that. Yeah, so I came out in 2020. We ended up quarantining together, which worked really well in our favor, obviously.
Yeah.
But I think it expedited our relationship because we weren't with other people we weren't with our friends, we weren't with our family. We were together in this tiny one-bedroom apartment and we did a lot of at-home dates. We got to know each other really deeply. And I think that really set the foundation for us because now we are really able to communicate with each other. We know each other on a really deep personal level. And in some ways, I have COVID to thank for that.
Yeah, honestly, for sure. And for your family, was it easy to come out to them, especially because you said that that was your first woman experience? So were they like kind of shocked or how was that like?
I think everyone was shocked. I think I was shocked.
Hmm.
I will say that all of my friends were so welcoming to the idea. I mean, when I was in Austin, Texas on that trip with my best friends, I was texting Sam and I remember sitting at brunch with them and they're like, okay, who are you talking to? You keep smiling at your phone. And so I remember telling them, like, I met someone and it's a girl. And just the level of like sheer happiness that they had for me and support. I know that not everyone gets to go through that. And
Hmm.
felt so lucky knowing that my closest friends were going to support me and we're still close friends, and some of them were in my wedding. They all came to my wedding, so that was super awesome to know that the friends who knew me as straight Rachel would still love me as queer Rachel. As far as my family, I remember coming home again. It was right during quarantine, so I remember sitting in the driveway and I just felt this weight on my shoulder because I am a very open person. I don't like keeping,
Hmm.
it eats away at me. And so the idea of hiding such a big part of my life from my family felt really icky. So I remember calling my brother Ben first and expressing to him that I met someone and it's a girl. And he was just like, okay. Like I remember like how nonchalant he was. He was like, that's great. I love you. Thank you for telling me.
Hmm.
But it wasn't like this huge, oh my gosh moment. My other brother, Jeff, did the exact same thing where he was like, that's amazing. I'm so happy for you. And then I decided to tell my mom. My mom and I have always been so close. We have been like best friends, mother, daughter.
Hmm.
And so when I was dating guys, I always was so open with her about my relationships with them. And I didn't really expect to have a negative reaction, but I remember going to lunch with her. We were in the car and I was like, all right, I need to tell you something, but I need you to promise me that you're not going to freak out, which hindsight, probably not the best way to preface this because
Mm-hmm.
obviously she now has her guards up, but I didn't know. I've never come out to anybody.
Yeah.
So I told her the exact same thing that I had told my friends and my brothers. I met this girl and I really like her. And I mean, her reaction, she is not one for change. That change is hard for her. And so
Mm-hmm.
it wasn't what she was expecting. And I remember her comments where it was like, oh my gosh, what the heck is happening? And so we immediately turn the car around and I'm faced with this level of shame because I was like,
Mm-hmm.
I thought that I didn't think there would be a negative reaction. And I have to give grace to my mom because I mean, she loves all of her kids so deeply. And I know she has kind of what is their life going to look like. It's already planned out in her head. And so for me to say I'm dating a girl, she never expected me to be with a girl. That was
Yeah.
not, I never gave off those flags like as a young kid. So she was just so shocked. And so her initial shock came with a level of discomfort. I mean, I would say a good 6 months, our relationship was rocked for sure because she just didn't come around to the idea of me dating a girl as quickly as I wanted. It also was during COVID, so the
Yeah.
world was uncertain, and now I'm bringing her with some new information that she wasn't she wasn't ready for. So that was hard. She ended up telling my dad, so I never got to have that conversation with my dad. She told him, hey, Rachel's dating a girl. Oh my God, what the heck is going on? What are we going to do? And I remember I had immediately gone to my friend's house right after I told my mom and we came back home without getting lunch. And I went over to my friend's house and I got a call from my dad. And he was like, your mom told me what happened in the car. I want you to know that we love you and that we support you. And I don't care if you're dating a boy or a girl. I just want you to be happy and I want you to feel loved. And so that was amazing.
Mm-hmm.
During that time where it was difficult for me and my mom, I did turn to my dad a lot because I was just like, I don't understand why she's not coming around to this idea. And he just said, it takes your mom a little bit longer to come around to things and she'll get there. Just give her time. And I did. And over time, as she got to know Sam more, she has a lot in common with Sam. They're both nurses. I would bring that up, like, oh, talk about nursing. Like, this is something you guys
Yeah.
have in common. And slowly she started to warm up more to Sam. And then, I mean, now Sam is a part of our family and she's treated just as anyone else is in our family with so much love and respect. And I do think that time is the best medicine, especially for those things. I know that there are some families that they don't come around or they don't have
Mm-hmm.
that positive experience after waiting X amount of months. So I know that I'm very lucky and very privileged to say that both of my parents do support me in my marriage, but it definitely was rocky for a little bit. And I'm thankful that I didn't give up
Yeah.
from what I thought I deserved or that I wanted to be with Sam because I knew I wanted to be with my wife Sam. And if I would have just said, you know what, this is too hard, I'm not going to do it, I wouldn't be to where I am right now. I wouldn't be married. I wouldn't be living in Washington State with her. There's just so much that has happened since that initial conversation. And I just am so proud of myself for just being true to myself and continuing
Yeah.
to into who I am and continue to make that growth.
Yeah. Thanks for sharing that. Honestly, yeah, like people's stories are also different. Like when I came out first as bi when I was like 16, my parents were kind of like, oh, like you never gave off those vibes, or like, oh, I never thought that. And it was kind of like awkward. I feel like I also just didn't do it in the proper way. But at the end of the day, like no one actually knows how to come out. Like it's an uncomfortable, awkward situation. And then I dated a guy for 7 years, and then I recently just came out as lesbian. And this time around, I was more like comfortable with it because I was like, okay, like I already came out as bi, they already know. And like this time I did it in like a more comfortable way, I guess, for me and for other people. And I'm also privileged and lucky to have like a family that supports me. But like you said, there are people who don't have that. And it makes me sad that like some people turn that like part of them off and then try to live like a completely different life than what they're meant to live because of that. Is that kind of why you started sharing more of that identity online on your socials?
Yeah. So I started feeling like I was living this double life. Like I had all of this love and this queer identity that I wasn't sharing online because I was trying to build this recipe blog. Like I wanted to share only recipes. And I felt like I was missing a huge part of me. And I was starting to feel not fulfilled just posting recipes because I
Yeah.
knew there was so much more to me than the fact that I like to cook and bake. What prompted me to do it was about 2 months before my wedding, I started having these like massive mental breakdowns because I think I finally was like, oh my gosh, I'm going to marry a woman. And
Mm-hmm.
it's it like, yes, I knew I was dating a woman, but I think the pressure of planning the wedding and then, oh my gosh, the wedding's almost here. Oh my gosh, this is a huge life change. And I'm marrying a woman. I never thought I was going to marry a woman. My life looks so different than I thought it would look.
Yeah.
And, I mean, you can see I have a lot of similarities to my mom. Like we are not great with change. And I was just having these like freakouts. And I remember Googling like what is cold feet because I was coming to Sam like in tears. Like I don't know what to think or to feel. And I know
Yeah.
I marry you. And I've never had these reservations with marriage. So why all of a sudden am I feeling this amount of stress and anxiety? And I talked to my therapist. Every session was me in tears and really stressed out because I didn't
Yeah.
what I was supposed to do. And ultimately, what it came down to was internalized homophobia and
Yeah.
societal pressure to be straight. And
Mm-hmm.
once I had that language, I was like, oh, okay, this isn't about me and Sam. This is only about the fact that we are brought up in our society to be straight and you have to come out as gay and you are now
Yeah.
going to live a different life if you are gay. And all of that societal pressure was just weighing on my shoulders because I never thought that that was going to be my narrative. And so once I had that, I was like, oh my gosh, okay, I need to share this because I don't
Mm-hmm.
have cold feet for my marriage. I don't have cold feet for my future wife. I am feeling all of the pressure that I have felt my entire life to fit a mold. And so I need to start sharing this side of me so that I can just feel more authentically me. So I posted a picture of Sam and I, and the caption was queer representation is so important. And I lost thousands of followers. Like initially, every time I refreshed my Instagram, it would
Wow.
drop, drop. And I was like, holy shit, like, what did I just do? Like, maybe I shouldn't have done that. And now I'm so thankful I did because, yes, I lose followers for sharing that piece of me, but I also am gaining followers with people who love to see the queer representation. And I have people that message me like, hey, your story really resonates with me. Thank you for sharing. Thank you for being so open. And at the end of the day, I would love to be someone that people look to as, see, look, I can have this happy, fulfilling life. Because look, there's people on the internet that are showing me you can get married, you can have kids, you can have a successful career, you can have a very prosperous life. I don't have to try to fit this mold that society says is the only way to go.
Yeah.
I have loved sharing more about my life. It's actually, it brings me more joy right now than it does posting recipes. So I'm slowly kind of going through a content shift of
Yeah.
sharing more about who I am, my queer identity, my marriage to Sam. And I love that. I love that now I have a little bit more flexibility, more wiggle room with what I can post and what I can share. And I hope it resonates with people. I mean, that's at the end of the day, that's what I want.
Yeah. No, I have so many things to say off that. The first thing, like how you were saying, like you lost a lot of followers from sharing that. I mean, with the recent election, I am Canadian, so I did not vote or anything. So people were like, oh, like you shouldn't have an opinion on it, but I think I still could. So I posted about the election and my thoughts on it and stuff. And I lost so many followers from that. And I was like, first of all, I didn't even know that many people followed me that supported someone like that. So like, do I really want them to be following me and engaging with my content? Not really. So it's the same thing like with you. Like if people don't want to support you, I don't think you should have them there because they don't deserve to like see your stuff and be a part of your community. So that's the first thing I wanted to say.
Right.
The second thing, representation is so important. And I think like growing up, I mean, there was no queer representation really. And if there was, it was always this one type of like lesbian, like Ellen DeGeneres, for
It was
example.
That's all it
Yeah,
was.
it was Ellen. And I was like, okay, like I like girls, but I don't look like that. And I don't feel like how like she represents, which like obviously that's fine. Like there's some people that do identify with her and I just didn't. And I was like, okay, like if I'm gay, like do I have to like dress like that? Do I have to present like that? And it was just like so confusing for me because I was like, hey, maybe I'm not because I don't look like that. But
Right.
now I feel like there's so much more representation, especially for like more femme or like tomboy femme like queers. And I love that. And I love that like people like you were like sharing your story now. And there's so many more people online for like not even just the younger generations, but like even older people that like don't have that representation. I think it's just really important. And then the third thing is I'm also going through like a content shift with my own stuff to like post more queer stuff because it just feels nice to like have people come to you and like say how much like you've helped them or like they identify with you and everything. You said a bit like you got comments and stuff, but have you got like any people that like you've helped like really discover themselves or come out or anything like that?
I have had a couple people message me. I had a reel of my wife and I go viral. And so I did have a couple people message me. And I do specifically remember one person saying, like, my parents are not supportive of me. Or I also had someone who's like, I'm scared to come out to my parents. And I did talk with them, kind of what I went through and share
Hmm.
what I think is helpful. I mean, I think talking to someone who's already been through it is huge and it can make you feel less alone. It's a really scary thing to come out, but the life you can live out of the closet is just so fulfilling and it feels hard. And there might be people who push back on you, but there's also a community of people who are going to welcome you with open arms. And you just have to find that chosen family to help you
Yeah.
through times.
Yeah, I love that. So the last part of our podcast, I asked people on Instagram to ask questions, and I picked two of my favorite ones. So the first one is, how do you handle feedback or comments from people who don't understand or respect your identity?
Oof. This one is tricky. I don't engage with them for one, because I'm not going to shift your mindset. If you are homophobic, if you are racist, if you are sexist, like my comment to you is not going to change your mind. So, like, why do I need to waste my energy?
Yeah,
Also feel things so deeply. So if I start getting into comments, I'm going to just be so mad and it's just not worth it. So I personally don't respond to them. I don't even read them half the time. As soon as I notice it's going to be a negative comment, I'm like, I don't really care. Like you said, people unfollowed me and I think that's the best way to go about it. If you don't want to
yeah,
see my content, don't follow me. Like
yeah,
there are people who definitely don't like seeing my content, but they will still find my account to post comments and troll me. And it's like, all you're doing at the end of the day is boosting my engagement. So
yeah,
if you really care that much and if you feel like this is helping you, go for it because there's a bunch of people in the comment section that will provide their own comments back to that person. So I'm like, you know what, guys, go at it. I don't, as long as we're all safe, just,
yeah.
I'd rather no one comment negative things. But the biggest thing for me is just to ignore it.
Yeah, no, I feel that too. Like on YouTube is where I post most of my like LGBTQ stuff so far. And the comments there are so like sometimes I'm like, where did like people even think of saying this? But at the end of the day, like you said, like it increases my views.
Yeah.
They don't realize they're basically putting money in my pocket in some capacity.
Yeah.
And that sucks for them. And like you said, like I used to always answer them and like try and like be funny or something, but now I'm like, you know what? I don't even need to waste my energy on that because like you said, most of the time you're not going to change someone's viewpoint. And also it's not like they're coming and like asking me like a question where like they're trying to understand. It's more so like Bible verses and stuff. And I hate
Yes.
that because I'm like, people can be religious and be queer. So it's so annoying when like someone's like, oh, like read this Bible verse and like it's gonna help you. Like how do you know like I already don't know that Bible verse? And second of all, like me reading that is not gonna be like I'm gonna be straight all of a sudden, you know?
Right. Yeah. And especially with the election, I started posting about my political views.
Hmm.
And at first I was like, oh gosh, this feels so sticky. Like I don't want to cross this bridge. And then I was like, no, like I absolutely need to speak up. I have a little bit of a following. I need
Hmm.
voice heard. And I think it's a bigger red flag if you don't hear people speaking out about these things, because
Yeah.
it is. And with all of that, I did have comments with the other side coming at me of trying to prove me wrong, or saying that they do support the LGBTQ plus community. And I'm like, y'all are delusional.
Can.
Like, let's
Yeah.
this I'm not going to get in a fight with you. We don't need to talk about it, but I feel it's important to for me to voice my opinion and say, like,
Hmm.
I don't know how this happened, but now it's our turn to fight for our rights and make sure they don't get taken away. And if that
Exactly.
needs to come at me in my comment section, again, you're just boosting my content, so whatever.
Yeah, 100%. No, I totally agree. I felt the same way. At first, I was kind of scared to say anything, and I was like, you know what? Like, I don't care. At the end of the day, like, even though I'm not American, so many of my friends live there, and whatever happens in America most of the time affects Canada too. So I was like, I'm just gonna talk and whatever. If people hate it, they hate it. I don't really care.
Exactly. I totally respect you for that too.
Thanks. And then the last question is, how do you ensure that your gluten-free recipes are accessible for people with different levels of cooking experience?
I would say all of my recipes are very beginner friendly. I don't have a culinary background. And so all of my recipes are ones that are just pretty simple. You have higher skills. You probably look at my recipes like, this is so like basic, but I think it's accessible. I think my recipes are easily adaptable to fit a family lifestyle. If you have kids that you're trying to sneak in veggies, or
Yeah.
increase healthier options, I think there are quite a few recipes you could jump on. But yeah, I would not say that my recipes are like crazy hard for anyone. You could be a beginner and look at my recipe and totally follow it.
Awesome. I love that. Well, that's all I had for you today. So thank you so much again for coming on and sharing your story. I mean, it's motivated me and I'm sure it motivates other people. And I always just love having different unique identities on the podcast. So thank you so much.
Thank you so much.